Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to Book Summary 5, the 5-Minute Summary channel. I'm Sammy, your host, and today we're diving into Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel García Márquez. This sweeping, sensual novel is a story of love, longing, and the passage of time, told with the rich, lyrical beauty that Márquez is so beloved for. Set in a Caribbean port city over the course of more than half a century, the novel asks a provocative question. Can love truly wait a lifetime? Let's float down this winding, emotional river together, so you'll feel like you've read it cover to cover. The story begins not at the start of young love, but with a funeral. Dr. Juvenal Urbino, an esteemed and rational physician, dies suddenly in a fall from a ladder, an event that brings old memories and older passions back into the light. His widow, Fermina Daza, is dignified and composed, but the appearance of Florentino Ariza, a man she hasn't spoken to in decades, unsettles her. Because on the very day of her husband's burial, Florentino, now in his 70s, comes to her and declares, once again, that he has loved her his entire life. From here, the story moves backward, revisiting the moment when Florentino and Fermina first met as teenagers. He was a shy, poetic telegraph operator, stricken with a kind of romantic fever, sending her letter after letter, overflowing with declarations of eternal love. She, still under the eye of her ambitious father, Lorenzo Daza, at first responds with cautious interest. Their young love blossoms in secret, mostly through written words and stolen glances, until one day, after years of correspondence, Fermina sees Florentino in person and something shifts. She realizes that the love she had imagined doesn't match the reality. Abruptly, she tells him it's over. Heartbroken but resolute, Florentino vows to wait. Fermina, meanwhile, enters into a very different kind of relationship, a marriage to Dr. Juvenal Urbino, the very embodiment of reason, science, and order. Their life together is complicated and flawed, filled with arguments and reconciliations, infidelities and affections. It is a marriage built more on stability and mutual respect than on passion, and Fermina, in her own way, grows to love him deeply. But that love is very different from the kind Florentino offered. And what does Florentino do all this time? He waits, but not in the way you might expect. While outwardly committed to remaining faithful to Fermina's memory, he engages in hundreds of romantic and sexual liaisons, carefully recording each one, yet keeping them emotionally distant. He becomes a successful businessman, head of the riverboat company, and builds a life filled with influence and experience. But beneath it all, he nurses the flame of his first love, waiting for the day he can return to Fermina and try again. When that day finally comes, over 50 years after their youthful affair, Florentino is not the same man, and Fermina is not the same woman. At first, she's furious with him for reappearing so soon after her husband's death. But Florentino, persistent and patient, begins to write to her again, not with teenage declarations, but with the letters of a man who has lived. Slowly, cautiously, Fermina begins to respond. And over time, a new, quieter love begins to grow between them, not the fevered obsession of youth, but something more seasoned, more forgiving. In the novel's final act, the two septuagenarians board a riverboat together, sailing away under the pretense of a trip for business. On that boat, they begin a new chapter, a love not born of fantasy, but of resilience, companionship, and the courage to begin again in the twilight of life. In the end, they ask the captain to raise the yellow cholera flag, signaling quarantine, so they won't have to return to society. They sail endlessly, metaphorically and literally, on a river of love that finally has no more barriers. Love in the Time of Cholera is a novel about what love becomes when it's tested by time, loss, rejection, and the ordinary pressures of life. Márquez writes not about idealized romance, but about love's endurance, its ability to adapt, to survive disillusionment, to blossom anew in unexpected seasons. It's about how people change, and how love can change with them if it's allowed to. Thank you for tuning in to Book Summary 5, the 5-Minute Summary channel. If you enjoyed this journey through love in the time of cholera, please subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. Until next time, happy reading, and remember, sometimes love doesn't burn out. It just waits patiently, like a boat on the river, ready to sail once more.